all-out emotional war zone. Everything started off pretty calm, but as we all know, when you bring ex-spouses together with their new partners, things are bound to explode. And this is exactly what went down when Quad Webb and Dr. Gregory Lunsford found themselves face-to-face, not only with each other, but also with their new significant others. Now, who could have guessed that what was supposed to be a peaceful couples retreat would turn into one of the most chaotic moments in the show's history? At first, the group seemed to be having a good time. There were smiles, drinks, and what looked like normal conversations. But here's the shocking part. It didn't take long before Quad started throwing not-so-subtle jabs at Dr. G and his new wife, LaDasha Sweet Tea Lunsford. And let me tell you, these weren't just simple digs. Quad went deep, making bold comments about their intimate life, and you could almost feel the tension rising through the screen. The group tried to play it cool, but you could tell everyone was on edge, waiting for the ticking time bomb to go off. But this is where it gets interesting. What we saw on TV was only half the story. After the episode aired, Dr. Heavenly rushed to her YouTube channel to spill the real tea. And let me just say, the craziest part? The most explosive moments didn't even make it to the final cut. According to Dr. Heavenly, Dr. G completely lost control. He didn't just sit there and take Quad's comments. He stood up, started yelling, and shockingly, turned his anger towards Sweet Tea. Dr. Heavenly described it as one of the most cringeworthy moments she's ever witnessed. Dr. G shouted, "You talk too much, you shut up!" It was aggressive, it was loud, and it left the whole group frozen, not knowing what to say or do. And here's where destiny took an unexpected turn. While Dr. G was clearly heated, there was confusion about who he was actually yelling at. Toya Bush Harris later claimed that his anger wasn't directed at Sweet Tea at all, it was actually aimed at Quad. Now think about that for a second. If Toya was right, that would completely change how we saw that entire moment. And honestly, it makes sense. Quad had been poking at Dr. G the whole time, bringing up sensitive topics, and maybe, just maybe, she was the one who finally pushed him over the edge. But here's the twist. Dr. Heavenly didn't see it that way. She insisted that Dr. G's outburst was meant for Sweet Tea, and that it was completely uncalled for. Meanwhile, the rest of the group sat there, caught between shock and awkwardness, sipping on their rum punch, probably wondering how they ended up in this mess. The situation got so tense that Cecil Whitmore had to step in. He stood up, physically putting himself between Dr. G and Sweet Tea, trying to calm everything down. It was one of those moments where you could feel the discomfort through the screen. But here's where it got even more intense. After Cecil stepped in and managed to calm Dr. G down, at least a little, the whole group sat in this heavy, awkward silence. No one knew what to say next. Sweet Tea looked completely shaken, and honestly, who could blame her? She probably didn't expect her peaceful vacation to turn into a public shouting match. But while everyone was trying to process what had just happened, Quad wasn't done. Oh no, this is where it gets interesting. She leaned back, took a sip of her drink, and with that signature Quad attitude, started throwing even more shade. But this time, she made it personal. You know, some people just can't change, no matter how hard they try, Quad said, her eyes locked on Dr. G. It was like she wanted to hit every nerve possible, and that's when things took a real turn. She started bringing up details from their past marriage, secrets that had been buried deep, stuff that wasn't meant for cameras, let alone a whole audience. And let me tell you, the craziest part? She didn't hold back at all. Quad hinted at things Dr. G allegedly did during their marriage, throwing in lines like, "You think she doesn't know who you really are? Because I do." The whole table went silent. It was like everyone knew this was going too far, but no one dared to stop her. And here's the shocking part. Dr. G didn't yell this time. He just sat there, his face turning red, looking like he was about to explode again but trying hard to hold it in. Sweet Tea, on the other hand, was visibly uncomfortable. You could see it all over her face. This wasn't the trip she signed up for. She looked down, barely speaking, while Quad kept on talking, digging deeper into their past. And that's when destiny took another unexpected turn. Sweet Tea, who had been quiet this whole time, finally spoke up. She looked at Quad and said, "I didn't come here for this. I'm not part of whatever issues you two still have." And honestly, it was the first time someone tried to bring a little sanity back to the table. But instead of diffusing the situation, it made Quad even more fired up. She shot back with, "Oh honey, you're part of it now. You married into this mess." And just like that, the tension skyrocketed again. Dr. Heavenly, who had been watching everything go down, later said on her YouTube that this moment was the most uncomfortable she had ever felt while filming the show. According to her, it wasn't just TV drama anymore. It was personal, deep, and messy in a way that even Married to Medicine hadn't seen before. She even admitted that some of the things Quad said were so intense they had to be edited out before the episode aired. Can you imagine? If what we saw was already this crazy, just think about what didn't make it to the screen. But here's the thing that really got people talking. Dr. Heavenly also mentioned that there was a moment when Dr. G nearly walked off the set completely. After Quad's relentless comments, he stood up, grabbed his drink, and stormed off, mumbling something under his breath that the mics barely picked up. Dr. Heavenly claimed he said, "I can't believe this is happening again." That one line, it spoke volumes. It wasn't just about this one fight. It was about all the unresolved issues, all the pain, and all the baggage from his past with Quad. And while Dr. G was off trying to cool down back at the table, the group was left sitting there, totally stunned. No one knew what to say or do. Some tried to lighten the mood with awkward laughs, but it was clear the damage had been done. Relationships were strained, trust was broken, and this so-called couple's getaway had officially turned into an emotional battlefield. As Dr. G stormed off into the night, the tension at the table lingered like a thick cloud. Everyone sat there in complete silence, the kind that feels so heavy you could almost hear it. Sweet Tea looked completely overwhelmed, trying to keep it together, but you could tell she was on the verge of tears. And Quad? She sat there calm, almost too calm, like she knew exactly what she was doing. But here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't just a fight between exes anymore. This was turning into something way deeper, something that would leave lasting cracks in the group. Toya Bush Harris, who had been quiet for most of the chaos, finally broke the silence. "Look, I'm just gonna say it," she began, her voice low but steady. "This wasn't all on Greg." And just like that, heads turned. People were shocked that Toya would defend Dr. G after what just happened. But she wasn't done. Quad's been poking him the entire time. She knew exactly what to say to set him off. It was a bold statement, and it sent the entire group into another spiral. But here's the shocking part. Dr. Heavenly, who had been Quad's close friend for years, didn't jump to her defense right away. Instead, she hesitated, which spoke volumes. "I mean, Toya's not wrong," she finally admitted, her voice filled with hesitation. "Quad went deep, and I'm not saying Dr. G handled it right, but this wasn't all one-sided." And that was the craziest part. It was like the group was finally acknowledging the unspoken truth, that Quad might have crossed a line, even if she had reasons rooted in old wounds. Meanwhile, off in the distance, the cameras followed Dr. G, who was pacing back and forth near the beach. He looked completely torn, running his hands through his hair, visibly stressed out.
You have something in your home right now that could make you thousands of dollars and literally change your financial.
Sweet Tea eventually got up from the table, quietly excusing herself, and walked over to him. And this is where destiny took another unexpected turn. Instead of comforting him, Sweet Tea confronted him. "I didn't sign up for this, Greg," she said, her voice shaking. "I thought we left all of this behind. Why are we still here, stuck in this mess with her?" And here's the craziest part. Dr. G didn't have an answer. He just stood there, silent, realizing that this wasn't just about Quad anymore. His new marriage was now caught in the crossfire, and Sweet Tea wasn't willing to just stand by and watch it crumble. It was a powerful moment, one that showed that even though this drama started with old wounds, it was beginning to infect the new relationships too. Back at the table, the rest of the group tried to piece together what had just happened. Contessa Metcalf, who had been mostly silent through the chaos, finally spoke up. "This trip was supposed to be about healing and moving forward," she said, shaking her head. "But now, we're worse off than before." And she wasn't wrong. The whole idea of bringing exes and their new partners together seemed doomed from the start, but no one expected it to unravel like this. But the drama wasn't done yet. Dr. Heavenly, always the one to stir the pot just a little more, leaned in and whispered, "You know the reunion's gonna be insane after this, right?"